Hi everyone, this is a video that's going to take you through the work solutions to the assessment preparation questions that I've given you. And I want you to use this video in a particular way. I don't want you to use the video to just copy the answers from this video onto your sheet, because by the time you're looking at the video, you'll have the answers. You've got the work solutions right in front of you. So you don't lack the answers. What you're lacking maybe on one or two questions is the understanding of how to get the answer. And so the way I want you to use this video is to find a question you can't do, don't write a thing, and just watch the video. Don't write a thing, just concentrate on trying to understand what the video is telling you. Once that part of the video is finished, stop watching it, close down the computer, and then you try and do the question without any support and without copying anything from the screen. If at any time you need to watch the video again, no problem at all, but stop writing and watch the video without writing. That's a completely different process to just watching the video, copying as you go. It doesn't work that way, trust me. Okay, let's go on to some of the questions and just take you through what we're doing. So you've got a shape like this. It's called a compound shape. It's made up of several or one or two common shapes. And I've cut it into a triangle and a rectangle. There are other ways of cutting it and they'll get the same answer. What's important in every case you do is that you identify the correct sides to work out the area. So this rectangle, we need this length and this height, and we've got both of those. It's 12 times 5 and that's 60 square centimeters. Just doing that would get a mark. We've got a triangle here. We need to know what the base and the height is. Well, if this is 12, and it is because it's 12 here, and this is 7, then the base of this triangle is 5. And if the height of this shape here is 9, and this is 5, then this bit here must be 4. So the base of the triangle is 5, and the height of the triangle is 4. And the formula for the area of a triangle is half base times height. So base times height is 4 times 5, which is 20, and half of that is 10. So your total area is made up of the triangle and the rectangle. So therefore, you add those answers together, the 60 and the 10, making 70 square centimeters. Same kind of approach applies here. Cut it into a triangle and a rectangle. This rectangle has a base of 75 and a height of 100, so that's 7,500 square meters. This triangle, well, it's 160 from here to here, and it's 75 from here to here, so this length here must be 85, because 85 add 75 makes you 160. This is 70, because 70 add the 30 makes the 100 that is here. And as you can see, I've written these numbers in. It helps me to work out the answers and see what I've got to do if I actually write the numbers into the diagram. And I suggest and I recommend that you do the same thing. The area of this triangle is half of base times height. So base times height is 70 times 85. And then we divide it by 2 to half it. And we get 2,975 square meters. So adding together these two answers gives me the area, or the total area, of the field. And we're told that every one of these square meters gets paid £3. So we simply need to take this number and multiply it by 3 and write a pound sign. So the answer is £31,425. This case, you've got a shape that is missing. So it says find the area that is shaded. Okay, well, if this rectangle wasn't here, the area that would be shaded would simply be half base times height. 10 times 12, 120, half it is 60. So if this rectangle wasn't there, the shaded area would be 60. But the shaded area isn't everything here because we've got a rectangle that isn't shaded. So the area that isn't shaded is simply 5 times 3, which is 15. 15 square centimeters. So we simply subtract the area of this rectangle away from the area of the triangle, which gives me 45 square centimeters. So it's similar to the other questions, only you're subtracting. So it's important to understand when you're adding and when you're subtracting. The area of a circle is found with the formula pi r squared, which means pi times radius times radius. You square the radius. Okay? Don't times it by pi and then square it. So it's pi times 3.6 squared, which gives me this answer here. Okay? And then you round it to 3 significant figures. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, this is my answer And this is it rounded to 3 significant figures. If you didn't do that part, you'll drop a mark. To work out the circumference of the circle, well, the formula for the circumference of a circle is pi times diameter. So be careful and don't just simply multiply this by pi, because this is the radius. The diameter goes from one end to the other. It's double the radius. So if the radius is 6.4, the diameter will be 12.8. Okay, just that number there doubled. And then you multiply that by pi, okay, and get 40.2 to 1 decimal place. Remember, the circumference is a distance, so make sure you write the right units, centimetre and not square centimetre. So the next question has some prisms, and the way to find the volume of a prism is simply to find the area of the face and then multiply it by the length, or the height if it's standing upright. So what we've got to do is a similar question to what we had at the first part of this sheet. We've got a compound shape and we find the area by simply cutting it into shapes we can find the area of. So I've just cut this into 2 rectangles. And once again, it's a matter of just identifying the correct sides to multiply. So this is 4 and this is 7. 4 times 7 is 28. If this is 9 and this is 4, then this must be 5. And so 5 times 2 makes 10. And so the area of the face is the area of these 2 rectangles combined, which is 28 plus 10, 38 square centimetres. And then we simply multiply that by 10 to get the volume. So the area of the face times the length, 38 times 10, 380 cubic centimetres. Down here we have another prism, but this time the face of the prism is in the shape of a trapezium. Now, it doesn't matter what the shape is, we've still got to find the area. So it's the area of this shaded face multiplied by 20. That's what we're always trying to do, the area of the face times the length. So you need to know the formula for the trapezium, and the way I remember it is like the average of the top and the bottom, and then you multiply it by the height. So top is 6 and bottom is 8, so 6 plus 8 is 14, divided by 2 is 7, multiplied by the height, which is 5, gives you 35 square centimetres. So the area of this face is 35 square centimetres. And now we're going to take that and multiply it by 20, because that's how long it is, to get the volume. So 35 times 20 is 700 cubic centimetres. Here we've got some question on bounds. Now we've got that V is S divided by T. And it says that S is 4.15 correct to 2 decimal places. T is 2.516 correct to 3 decimal places. Work out the upper bound for V. Now what we don't do is use these numbers to work out V and then try and work out an upper and lower bound for it. What we do is we look at each of these numbers individually and look at their upper and lower bounds. Now if this number is 4.15 correct to 2 decimal places, it means that it could be as big as 4.155 or as small as 4.145. And in the same way, T can be anywhere between 2.5165, the upper bound, and 2.5155, the lower bound. So if we want V to be as big as possible, because it says the upper for V, then we need to choose the number for S that is as big as possible. And because we're dividing by T, we want the number that we have for T to be as small as possible. So that means we choose the biggest S and the smallest T. So that's what I've chosen. The biggest value for S and the smallest value for T. And that gives me the biggest possible number I can make V. Okay, and to 3 decimal places, here it is. We've got the same kind of idea here, but we've got V equals IR. So once again, we've got I and R correct to 2 decimal places. It's 5.92. So the upper is 5.925. And to the lower decimal, lower bound rather, is 5.915. And in the same case, this is the upper bound for R and the lower bound for R. Now, we want to make V the biggest it can possibly be. Now, here we were dividing the numbers. Here we're multiplying the numbers. So it's simply, to make this calculation as big as possible when we're multiplying the numbers, we want both of them to be as big as possible. So I chose I as big as possible and R as big as possible to multiply together to make the answer as big as possible. So it's important you understand Okay, why we're choosing the upper or the lower, okay, it depends on the calculation we're doing with the numbers. Okay, so the biggest number we can make v would be for both of these numbers to be as big as possible. So I've chosen these two numbers, I've multiplied them together, and this is the answer I get to 3 decimal places. So this question says complete the table of values for y equals x cubed plus x minus 2. And in all questions like this, they give you a table with some x values, and you have to use this rule to work out what the y number will be, and then you plot these points to make a graph. So when x is 2, y will be 2 cubed, 8, plus 2, 10, minus 2, 8. When x is 1, y will be 1 cubed, plus 1, which is 2. Take away 2, 0. When x is 0, it will be 0 cubed, plus 0, which is nothing. Take away 2, minus 2. X is minus 1. Minus 1 cubed will be minus 1 times minus 1, which is 1, times minus 1, which is minus 1. Add minus 1, now that takes us up to minus 2, and now we're taking away a further 2, which gives us minus 4. And the points are then plotted on this graph, or the piece of graph paper. So x is 2, y is 8, x is 2 and y is 8, x is 1 and y is 0, x is 1 and y is 0, and those points don't lie in a straight line, so don't join them up with a straight line. Join them up in a nice smooth curve similar to what I've done here. Okay, recommend you do it in pencil first of all, just in case you make a mistake. So nice smooth curve, join them up. Now in this table you've got the same kind of idea, but this now you've got a different function, a different equation of a line. It says y equals x squared plus x. So when x is 3, y will be 3 squared plus 3. 3 squared is 9, plus 3 is 12. When x is 2, y will be 2 squared, 4, add 2, 6. When x is 1, 1 squared plus 1, 2. 0 squared plus 0. Minus 1 squared is minus 1 times minus 1. Add minus 1 makes 0. Remember, minus 1 times minus 1 makes plus 1. When x is minus 2, you'll have minus 2 squared, which is positive 4, plus 4. Add minus 2, which is 2. Now what I want you to notice, and we spoke about this when we did this in class, is the symmetry of the results. When you plot this, you can see that you get this kind of curve. Okay? And that means it's symmetrical, which means your results will be symmetrical. And you can use that symmetry to spot mistakes. Look, 12, 6, 2, 0, 0, 2, 6. Okay? See the symmetry here in your results. If you don't get a symmetry, it means you've made a mistake, and that helps you spot any mistakes you make, because we all make them. The next thing I want to talk about is the fact that when you plotted 0 here and 0 here, because you know the shape of the curve, it has to dip slightly underneath. Okay? Between minus 1 and 0, it dips underneath. Don't cut it off and make it flat, like a flat straight line. That will be wrong. And the last thing I want to talk about is using a scientific calculator. Now, I don't bother, because it's too much like hard work. If you want to do minus 1 squared on a scientific calculator, and you press in minus 1 and then press a squared button, it will say minus 1, which isn't right. Because what the calculator does is it does the negative of 1 squared. So it squares 1 and then makes it negative. If you want minus 1 times minus 1, you have to put it in a bracket. So you'd go bracket minus 1, close the bracket, then squared. Now that's so much hard work, I don't bother. So I really recommend that you just do this and work these out on a bit of paper in rough. If this was an exam, you've got all this space here, do the rough work here, it's perfectly fine. Okay, and put your answers in here. Okay, let's move on. Calculate the equation of each of the lines. Okay, so we need to work out two things for these lines. First of all, the gradient, and secondly, where it crosses the y-axis. This line, we'll do this one first. We choose 2 points here, could be any 2 points, but always good to choose the points where the line goes through the grid. If we travel from left to right, from here up to here, we go along 1 and up 2. And working out the up number divided by the along number gives us the gradient. The gradient is 2. It means every time we go along 1, we go up 2. So that's our gradient number, and that tells us the amount of x, 2x. Where the line crosses the y-axis is what's called the y-intercept, 3. And the equation of this line is y equals 2x plus 3. And we can check that's right because look, let's choose 3 as an example. If x is 3, what would y be? It would be 2 lots of 3, 6, add 3, 9. So when x is 3, y is 9. Let's just check. X is 3, up to the line, oh, we've missed it, but I think we can see that that would be 9. Let's just try another one. X is 2. 2 lots of 2, 4, add 3, 7. So when x is 2, y is 7. X is 2, up to the line, and look, y is 7. It works. Okay, so this line works out the y numbers when we know what the x numbers are, rather. On this one here, got a similar idea, but the line is sloping down from left to right. We always go from left to right. I've chosen 2 points, these points here, and I've gone from left to right. So this time I've gone along 1, but now I've gone down 2. See here we went up 2. We've gone down 2. So that this number is negative. Okay, so the gradient is minus 2 divided by 1, which is minus 2. So the amount of x is negative. The number at the end is 5. So the equation is y equals minus 2x, because the minus 2 was the gradient, plus 5, because that's where it crosses the y-axis. Okay, and if you wanted to, you could write it like this, y equals minus 2x plus 5, or if you wanted to, you could write it as y equals 5 minus 2x. Okay, right, this question here is about drawing with a pencil and a compass. I'm not going to do it for you because you can look on My Maths, you can look on Corbett Maths, and it will show you how to do it. All I would say is 2 things. First of all, work really accurately. Number 2, use compasses. If you're not using a compass, you're not going to get the marks. Use a compass to draw it and show the compass lines, show the pencil lines you do, okay? Don't make it up. Don't do it without a compass and then draw in some curved lines to make it look like you've used the compass. You won't get the marks, okay? So, if you're not sure about that, look it up on Corbett Maths. Recognizing graphs. Write down the letter of the graph which could have the equation here. Okay, I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller so we can see the graphs and the questions at the same time. Right, now, this one here is going to be a straight line. I know that from the work we did just a minute ago. So it's this one here, or it's this one here, or it's this one here. Well, it can't be these two, because these ones have negative gradients. They slope down from left to right, and this one's got a positive gradient. It must be this one here. As a last minute check, remember, this minus 2 tells me where the line crosses the y-axis, and I can see that it crosses below here, so it's negative. I don't know what that number is, but it's definitely negative, so it must be this one here. So H is the one for I. Y equals 2x squared plus 5x minus 3. Now that's going to give me that kind of bowl shape, that U-shaped graph that we saw a minute ago when we were doing the graph plotting. So my candidates are going to be D or I. Both of them are curved. Okay, which one will it be? Well, if I look here, I can see that if x was nothing, x was 0, that would be 2 lots of nothing squared and 5 lots of nothing, which is nothing, minus 3. So when x is 0, that would be 0 and that would be 0, and so y would just be minus 3. So I need the curve to be negative when x is 0. It must be this one here. Here, it's positive, just above the x-axis. Here, it's below the x-axis. So it must be this one here. So this is D. The last question asks us about y equals 3 divided by x. So whatever x is, we're going to divide 3 by it. So as x gets bigger and bigger and bigger, y is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. 3 divided by 10 is 0.3. 3 divided by 100 is 0.03. 3 divided by 1,000 is 0.003, and so on. But it's never going to be 0. No matter how big this number is, even though this answer is going to get small and smaller and smaller, it will never be 0. So the graph we're looking for is this one here. It's getting smaller and smaller and smaller, but never quite touching this x-axis. As x gets smaller, then 3 divided by 0.1, for example, would be 30. 3 divided by 0.01 would be 300. So x is getting smaller. This answer is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay, now we have exactly the same idea here, only it's going to be negative because here x is negative here, so y will be negative. So we get a weird kind of graph where this and this never match up. All the graphs you've seen before are nice and smooth and continuous, but there's a deliberate break from here to here. That doesn't join up with that. Okay, so this is the graph we want. This is of a similar kind of shape, but it's not the one we want because y should be positive. When x is, say, for example, 0.1, 3 divided by 0.1 would be 30. Okay, but here we can see it's negative. This is the one we want. So this goes with graph A. Okay, I'm just going to go back to making this a little bit bigger and then move on to the next question. Right, transformations. The triangle is reflected in the line x equals minus 1 and then reflected in the line y equals 1 to give triangle Q. So here's the line y equals, beg your pardon, x equals minus 1. How do I know that? It's all the points where the x number is minus 1. Minus 1, 0, minus 1, 1, minus 1, 2, minus 1, 3, minus 1, 5, minus 1, minus 3. All those points where the x number is minus 1 lie in a line. And that's the equation of the line x is minus 1. So the first thing I've done is I've reflected this shape over into here. Okay, you can do it with tracing paper. The way I do it is I just say, okay, 2 squares away from the mirror this side, so it's 2 squares that side. 1, 2, 3, 4 squares from the mirror this side, 1, 2, 3, 4 that side. Okay, and I just do the points and join it up. If you need to use tracing paper, use it. Don't risk losing marks. Then, this triangle is going to get reflected in the line y equals 1. So just like the other one, this is the line where all the y numbers are 1. Okay, so what's the coordinate of this? 1, 1. What's the coordinate of this point? 3, 1. 6, 1. Minus 5, 1. All those points where the second number, the y number, is 1, lie in a line. And the name of that line is the rule that they all follow, that y equals 1. So this is the mirror line, and then you reflect that over to here. And then it asks, describe fully the single transformation which maps triangle P onto triangle Q, which means how do we get from there to there in one go? Not 2 translations from there and then there. What's a single translation? Well, you can see it's upside down. Okay, and it's been rotated. And the center of rotation is here. That's where you would put your pen when you turn the tracing paper to turn this round to here. Okay? And if you need a little bit of guesswork to find it, that's fine. You often do. Don't worry. So, what can we say? It's a rotation, there's a mark, of 180 degrees, center, minus 1, 1. Okay? So, rotation, okay, that's the translation, or transformation rather, beg your pardon, of 180 degrees. That's how much you're rotating it by. And then the center. You need all 3 of these pieces of information to get the whole lot of the marks. Here it says, describe fully the single transformation that maps shape P onto shape Q. Well, if we look at P and Q, we can see that Q is bigger. Okay, how much bigger? Well, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is 1, 2, and 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. So basically, this triangle is 2.5 times bigger than this triangle. Okay? So what we have to do is write that down in maths language. It's an enlargement, scale factor 2.5. It just basically means it's 2.5 times bigger. And we need to find out where the center of enlargement is. And we find that by joining the points of the corresponding shapes together. So the top of the triangle with the top of this triangle, and keep on going. The corner, the bottom corner here with the bottom corner here, trace it back and keep on going. Okay, the right hand corner with the right hand corner, trace it back and keep on going. And where they converge, where they cross, is called the center of enlargement, and you write down what the coordinate is. Okay, so an enlargement because it's got bigger, scale factor 2.5 because it's 2.5 times bigger, center of enlargement there, 0, 0. Same kind of idea as before. Okay, I think you got the idea about the lines now. So that goes to there, then that goes to there. What is a single transformation? that gets rotated from there round to there. Okay, rotation of 180 degrees. Center of rotation, -1, 0. Okay, -1, 0. That's where you're going to put your pen when you rotate it. Just one last thing. It says rotation of 180 degrees. If it was 90 degrees, I know it's not, but if it was 90 degrees, then you'd have to say 90 degrees clockwise or 90 degrees anti-clockwise. Okay, so if you needed to go from here down to maybe here, you could either say 90 degrees clockwise or you could say 270 degrees anti-clockwise. Both would be the same. You don't need to for 180 degrees because it's half a turn, so it doesn't matter whether you go clockwise or anti-clockwise, you'll get to the same place. Okay. Here are your compound measures. So remember your formula triangles. Distance is speed times time, and now you can find out each of these things just by covering up what you need to know. So here are your answers. Speed is distance divided by time. Distance is speed times time. And mass is density times volume. And so you've got the answers there. Okay, it's just a matter of using your formula triangles. Solving inequalities, n is an integer. Write down all the possible values of n. Well, n is in between -3 up to and including 1 rather. Okay, so it can actually be 1 because it's less than or equal to, but it can't be -3 because it says -3 is less than n. So -3 is less than n, and n is less than or equal to 1. So the values must be -2, -1, 0, and 1. Here, you're solving an inequality. 3p minus 7 is bigger than 11. Remember, we've done these on our homework sheets. And you solve them in exactly the same kind of way as you would do if you had an equation that said 3p minus 7 equals 11. So however you would solve that is exactly how you would solve this. It's just that you have a bigger than sign rather than an equal sign. So if this said 3p minus 7 equals 11, you would do these steps and the answer would be p equals 6. But it's a bigger than sign, so the answer is p is bigger than 6. And you solve this in exactly the same way. Same kind of steps. Okay, so if you solve that, and I know you can solve that, you get an answer of x equals 3, but it's a bigger than sign, so it's x is bigger than 3. And if it was 7x minus 3 is less than 18, then it would be x is less than 3. It's just the same symbol all the way through. Then it says x is a whole number such that 7x minus 3 is bigger than 18. Write down the smallest value of x. Well, we know from what we did here that x has got to be bigger than 3. Okay, so it can't actually be 3. So if it's got to be a whole number, the smallest it can be would be the next whole number, which would be 4. Here we've got to factorize. So remember, we're looking for two numbers that are going to multiply together to make minus 45, and they're going to add together to make minus 4. Remember, these are the two numbers we're looking for. They're multiplying together to make something that's negative. So that tells me that one must be positive and one must be negative. If they were both positive or they were both negative, when you multiplied them, it would make a positive answer. So, a little bit of guesswork, but here's the answers. Minus 9 and 5. Why? Because minus 9 times 5 makes minus 45, and minus 9 add 5 makes minus 4. And that's what you need to have. Okay, so that's what it is factorized. Then we're going to solve this equation. So this and this are the same, but now we've got it equal to 0. So the first step is to factorize it, like we did up here. So I'm just taking this answer and putting it here. And we've got an answer that these two brackets multiplied make 0. Well, if two things are multiplied together to make an answer of 0, one of those two things must be 0. If you just think about two numbers in your head and you multiply them, the only way you ever get an answer that's 0 is if one of the numbers in your head is 0. So, if these two things are multiplied to make 0, then either that must be 0, or this must be 0. Well, if this is 0, x must be minus 5, because you'd have minus 5 add 5 is 0. And if this is 0, then x would be 9. So there's two ways to make this 0. One is for x to be 9, which would make that bracket 0. And one is for x to be minus 5, which makes that bracket 0. So remember, you usually have two answers here for an equation like this because of the squared. Okay, now you're going to factorize x squared plus 9x plus 20. So this is a bit easier because there's no negative signs. You're looking for two numbers that multiply together to make 20 and that add together to make 9. Easy, 4 and 5. 4 times 5 is 20, 4 add 5, 9. So that's it, factorized. And then just like before, you're going to solve the equation, which is x squared plus 9x plus 20 equals 0. So you factorize it, so you take this answer here, equals 0. And just like up here, you work out what value x needs to be to make each of these brackets 0. So if x plus 4 is 0, x must be minus 4. And if x plus 5 is 0, x must be minus 5. So like before, two answers, x is minus 4 or x is minus 5. Probability, well, these numbers have got to add up to make 1. So basically add up these three numbers and take it away from 1. And what's left must be the probability of chocolate. Tree diagrams. Okay, first of all, a simple matter of completing the tree diagram with the probabilities. So the probability that Hannah wins badminton is 9/10. So the probability she doesn't is 1 out of 10. The probability she wins tennis is 2 out of 5. So the probability she doesn't is 3 out of 5. And we're going to put the same probabilities in here. So the probability she wins is 2 out of 5. And the probability she loses is 3 out of 5. Work out the probability that Hannah will win both matches. So she's going to win badminton and, keyword, win at tennis. So win, win. We find the probability of those both things happening by multiplying the probabilities together. So it's 9/10 multiplied by 2/5. 9 times 2 is 18. 10 times 5 is 50. And if you want afterwards, you can simplify that to 9 over 25. Here, you've got a slightly more difficult question, just in really putting the probabilities in. The way you're going to use the tree diagram will be the same. So there are only red marbles and green marbles in a bag, and there are 5 red marbles and 3 green marbles. So this is the important thing. She takes at random a marble from the bag, and he does not put the marble back in the bag. So if the first bead is red, then it's 3 out of 8 for green. Okay, if the first bead is red, and it doesn't get put back, on the second go, there will be 7 beads, and only 4 of them will be red because you've taken 1 out. But there'll still be 3 green, and so the probability of green is now 3 out of 7. If the first bead was green, then the probability of red will be 5 out of 7, because if the first one was green, there will still be 5 red in the bag. And there will only be 2 green left, so the probability of green on the second go is 2 out of 7. Then it says, work out the probability that Dwayne takes marbles of different colours. So how could that happen? Well, you could get a red and a green, or a green and a red. So red-green is 5/8 times 3/7. Green-red is 3/8 times 5/7. And those probabilities get multiplied together. Okay, and because you could have it in both different ways, you could get red-green or green-red, you add these answers together. So this is the probability of red and green, and this is the probability of green and red, and now you add them together. And remember, you never add the denominators. So 15 add 15 is 30 out of 56, which I've cancelled down just in case you've done it as well. Okay, but I'm sure that answer is fine. Out of 50 people surveyed, 30 have a brother, 25 have a sister, and 6 have neither a brother or a sister. Use this information to complete the Venn diagram. So this box represents the 50 people who are surveyed, and 6 people don't have a brother or a sister, so they go outside. So that means we've got 44 people left in this circle. If 6 are here, 44 remain because the whole lot is 50. Now we're told that 30 have a brother and 25 have a sister. When you add that 30 and the 25 together, you get 55. Hang on, but I just told you that this is only 44 in here. So how come it's added up to 55? the reason that is because some of these people who had a brother also have a sister. Okay, so these are not 30 people who just have a brother, and these aren't 25 people who just have a sister. So some people have been double counted. Well, if I've just told you that the total amount here must be 44 to add to the 6 to make 50, and the 30 and the 25 adds up to 55, that's 11 too many. Okay, and those 11 are over because they've been counted twice. So these 11, the difference between the 55 and the 44, these are the people who put their hand up twice. Once when I asked them if they had a brother, and once when I asked them if they had a sister. So these 11 go in here. Now we're told that 25 have a sister. Well, we've already got 11 who've got a sister and a brother, so the remaining 14 go in here. 11 plus 14 makes the 25. And these 11 here have a brother as well. So if 30 have a brother in total, then 19 will go here. So 19 have a brother but no sister. 11 have a brother and a sister, making together the 30 people who have a brother. So that is how you complete this Venn diagram. 40 students were surveyed, 20 have visited France, 15 have visited Spain, and 10 have visited both France and Spain. So 10 go in here because they visited both. 15 have visited Spain. Well, we've got 10 already, so we need an extra 5 to go here to make the 15 who have visited Spain. 20 have visited France. 10 of them have visited Spain and France, so we need an extra 10 here to make the 20 that have gone to France. How many people have we got so far? 10 plus 10 plus 5 is 25. There were 40 students altogether, so we're out by 15. So those 15 students must be people who haven't visited France or Spain, and they go here, or here, anywhere outside. Simultaneous equations. Now remember what to do. Make the x's or the y's the same. So I don't see any negative signs here, so I've multiplied this equation by 4 to give me 12x plus 8y equals 16. And this equation by 3 to make 12x plus 15y plus 51 equals 51. I did that to make the same amount of x. I now subtract equation 3 from equation 4. 12x takes 12x is nothing, that's why I did it, it gets rid of the x's. 15y take 8y is 7y. 51 take 16 is 35. So now I get an equation with just y. 7y is 35, so y is 5. Now I know that y is 5, I work out what x is. I take one of these, whichever one looks the most simple. I've taken the top one. It says 3x plus 2y is 4, but now I know that y is 5, so 2y will be 10. 3x plus 10 is 4. Take 10 from both sides, I get 3x equals minus 6. Now divide by 3, x is minus 2. So the answer is that x is minus 2 and y is 5. Here, I've got y and y here, and I notice that one is positive and one is negative. So they're the ones I'm going to make the same, because it makes life easier to do it that way. So to make these the same, I'm going to multiply this by 2, and I'm going to multiply this by 5. 2 lots of that is 6x, 2 lots of that is 10y, 2 lots of that is 38. 5 lots of that is 20x, 5 lots of that is minus 10y, and 5 lots of that is minus 90. Now because that is positive and that is negative, when I add them together, they'll disappear, and that's why I did it, to make that positive and that negative disappear. 6x add 20x is 26x. That added together makes nothing. Minus 90 add 38 is minus 52. So x is going to be minus 2. 52 minus 52 divided by 26. And then I substitute that value into one of these equations. 3x plus 5y is 19. Well, x is minus 2, so 3 lots of that is minus 6. Add 6 to both sides. I get 5y is 25, and so y is 5. So my answer is x is minus 2 and y is 5. The last question on the simultaneous equations section says solve the simultaneous equations x squared plus y squared equals 13 and x equals y minus 5. Now we haven't done a question like this before. We will, but we haven't done it yet. But if you're interested, I'll show you how to do it, and there might be someone from another group wanting to know anyway, so I'll do this particular question. First thing to know is that you can't solve it this way. You need a different way of solving it, and that's called substitution. So we've got x squared plus y squared equals 13 and x equals y minus 5. And just like before here, we need to get an equation that's just got x or y in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, okay, x squared plus y squared is 13, but x is y minus 5. So the first thing I do is instead of writing x here, I write y minus 5 squared, because y minus 5 is what x is. And the reason I did that is because now I've got an equation that just involves y. There's no x's. And now I need to simplify and solve this equation. So the first thing I do is I expand this bracket. Y minus 5 squared is going to give me y squared minus 10y plus 25. And I'm adding the y squared and it equals 13. So the next stage to do is to take this 13 over to here, take away 13 from both sides, and that's why I've got a 12 there. And to put this y squared here with this y squared here, so I've got 2y squared minus 10y, that didn't change, add 12 equals 0. Because remember, we want these quadratics always to be equal to 0 in order to solve it. Now they're both, all these things are negative. Start again. All these things are even numbers, 2, 10 and 12. And so a simple thing to do, first of all, to make it more simple, is to just half everything. So half of 2y is y squared, half of minus 10y is minus 5y, and half of 12 is 6. Okay, if it's equal to 0 before, when I half it, it will still be equal to 0. And I've done that because it's so much more simple. Okay, I can't always do that, okay, but I can here, and it makes it more simple. So I need to factorize it. I'm looking for two numbers that are going to multiply to make 6 and add together to make minus 5. And the answers are minus 3 and minus 2. Minus 3 times minus 2 makes plus 6. Two negatives make a positive. And minus 3 add minus 2 makes minus 5. So in this simultaneous equation, I've got two answers for y. 3 or 2. 3 because that makes that bracket 0. And 2 because that makes that bracket 0. And now I need to work out what x must be. Well, if y is 3, x would be 3 minus 5 minus 2. And if y was 2, x would be 2 minus 5 minus 3. So it's important to pair them up. When when y is 3, x is minus 2. When y is 2, x is minus 3. So there's two pairs of numbers that will make this work. Okay, but don't mix them up. The minus 2 for x goes with the 3 for y. Okay, these two don't go together and these two don't go together. Okay, they're not solutions. So if y is 3, x can be minus 2 and it would work. If y was 2, x would be minus 3 and it would work. Okay, moving on. This one here you should be fairly comfortable with because it's what we've been doing very recently. So it's 4,500 for 2 years in a savings account. Okay, if it's 4% per annum compound interest, your multiplier is 1.04 to the power of 2 because it's 2 years. Here's your answer. Remember to write it as pounds because it's money. So the last question says Derek invests £154,500 for 2 years at 4% per year compound interest. Work out the value of the investment at the end of 2 years. So this is the same idea as the previous question. You're putting some money in an account. It's getting 4% for 2 years. It says here, how much money did he have in his savings account? It says here, work out the value of the investment. It's the same kind of question. So 154,500 growing by 4% every year. So you're multiplying it by 1.04 2 times, or to the power of 2. Okay, and that is going to be your answer. Okay, I hope that's helpful to you. Remember, you've got the lists of topics and you've got the Corbett Maths links as well. If I can help you in any way, please let me know. Otherwise, happy revising, and I hope it all goes well for you on Monday. Cheers. Bye.